Today's episode of the Vancast is sponsored by the NBA and their That's Game campaign. That's Game encapsulates the league's goals of advancing the game of basketball, growing the community, and impacting culture. The campaign celebrates the NBA, its players, and fans across the past, present, and future as the NBA soon approaches its 75th anniversary. It's like in the NBA Finals when Kyle Lowry absolutely takes over Game 6 to win the Toronto Raptors their first chip. That's the NBA. That's game. This is more than just basketball. It's what connects us all and keeps us coming back for more. That's the NBA. That's game. Welcome everybody to the Vancast. Today we've got a special episode. I talked for too long all by myself the other day. 64 minutes of Drance was not what anybody needed. So I figured I'd best bring on a guest, someone to help carry the load, as it were. And so we've dipped back into the well. We've got our second-time guest, Canucks head coach Travis Green. We talked training camp. We talked about last season, the mark that it left. We talked Nate Schmidt. And I tried to do a lightning round with him, which, he did okay in. Wasn't his best. Wasn't his best performance in the lightning round, but overall a really detailed conversation on the Canucks offseason, what to expect next, what input he had on some of the moves that occurred. So stay tuned for that. It was a really fun conversation. And I just want to thank everybody who listened to the mailbag last week. Really an insane response, like truly touched by the amount of positive feedback we got, by the fact that so many of our listeners stuck around with us despite the departure of our beloved co-host, Jeff Patterson. It was a lot of fun to do, and I was so gratified to see so many of you tune back in and stick with us. We've got Travis Green for you this week. We'll have another good guest for you next week. We're going to keep it going. We're going to talk to key Canucks decision makers and just sort of spend some time this summer figuring out exactly what the next iteration of the Vancast looks like, which we will launch prior to Canucks training camp in September. And I'm so excited to share those plans with you. But for now, you're stuck with me and whatever guests I can, twist their arm to get on to join us. So without further ado, here's our conversation on the Vancast with the Canucks head coach. All right, welcoming on to the Vancast for the second time, Travis Green, joining Farhan, Harmon, and I think Rick Dollywall is like the only two-time guests in Vancast history. It's a man who you've heard answer a lot of my questions. About 33% of the time, it's a really good answer. 33% of the time, it's a mutual giggling fit. And 30% of the time, I get dunked on and Twitter roasts me for asking a dumb question. It's Canucks head coach Travis Green. How you doing, Travis?
Good, Drancer. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How's the summer going?
It's been good. A little time to get away, which I think a lot of people needed after last season. And it's kind of took us into the draft and free agency, and which I, as a coach, obviously think that it was a success for us, and now just gearing up for the upcoming season. Did you need a little more time after the way that 2021 played out, just the season as a whole, but also for you personally with, the illness you battled and also, the contract status, the way that the pressure mounted on you personally and your club over the course of last season? Yeah, I would, if I'm being honest, yeah, I did. It was a tough season for everyone. But I wouldn't say it was like the pressure wasn't the part of it. It was just, after the season that we had, I just felt like if I wanted to be productive, we really needed to get away a little bit. I don't think people understand that, the magnitude of playing so many games in a condensed schedule, the whole COVID thing. I just felt like I needed some time to just kind of, I guess, re-energize, refocus. Really, I find when I'm in that state of mind, I can look back at things a lot clearer. And I thought it was important to just take some time, not just for myself, but for the players. And before I even had communication with the players again, I wanted them to have some time away from us because last season, the players were at the rink every day, and there was testing every day. and not that you're, I say it in a way of people wanting to feel sorry for these players. It's a real privilege and an honor to play in the NHL. But when you're doing it every day and you're going through the grind, and the players do feel that pressure because they want to win bad. And when I said it wasn't because of the pressure, hey, there is pressure to play in the NHL and to win in the NHL. And these guys never got a break from it at all. And I just felt like, we really needed some time at the end of the year to kind of take a step back and analyze things.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a job, right? And last year it was a job you couldn't get away from, right? Like you couldn't even take a day trip up to Whistler and just like go for a walk. Like you had to hit the rink and test. Yeah. So, I mean, anyone who can't relate to that, I think is a little bit out to lunch. We'll come back to the season and the summer. And I do want to ask you too about how big a departure it was to take it easy because, you're known as a pretty hard driving person, just in terms of your own work ethic. But I want to throw you a curveball, and I'm going to take a risk here.
This is the one where usually I don't know how you put it, but where the Twitter people slam on you or dunk on you.
Yeah, dunk on me for sure. Well, and I this is a risk because I want to tell our listeners I have this great memory from Penticton Young Stars, like back in the day. I think it was 2016, like right before I got the Panthers job, and you were still coaching Utica. And I remember there's this TV reporter who comes in from the interior, probably not even a sports reporter, and they do your first availability like right after a pre-tournament practice. And this was clearly someone who'd like never worked with you and didn't really react as you grew increasingly more skeptical while they gave you a preamble, much like this one. And they essentially tried to play a game of word association with you, and they explained the premise. You're like eyebrows arched. You were like, oh boy, this is not going to go well. And they started asking you like in words about Penticton. They were like wine country, like prospects, and you gave zero answers.
Like I know what the eyebrow roll is because if you can see me now, I'm doing it.
It was phenomenal. Like I think the last one was Castlegar, and finally you just stopped him and you were like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. So at the risk of recreating that excruciatingly awkward moment for our listeners, I want to start you with like the Vancast version of a 40 skate. Okay, this is a lightning round. Quick answers, quick questions,
right,
just to get the ball rolling here.
Get the ball rolling for you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Okay. I appreciate it. All right, let's go. Favorite part about coaching in Vancouver?
Oh man, that's the lightning round. It's hard for a question like that. There's so many great weeks. First of all, just it's the NHL. Being in the NHL and being in my hometown or home province is special to me. It's a privilege to be in the NHL.
Hardest part about coaching in Vancouver?
There isn't one. It's just I just want to win.
Favorite Vancouver restaurant?
Lisa.
Favorite Vancouver sushi place?
Ooh, there's a lot.
Do you own a pair of Blundstones? Yes or no?
No.
Preferred brand of raincoat?
Wouldn't know one.
Wow. Favorite outdoor activity in Vancouver?
Ooh. Probably going for a walk or on the seawall. Riding my bike to the rink.
First place you take an out-of-town visitor that's never been to Vancouver before?
Oh, man. The seawall on a sunny day.
Best pure athlete among anyone you ever played with or coached in the NHL?
Ooh, that is a tough one. Man. So many. Can't name one.
Like, there's not one guy who stands out as like you could play ping pong with him and he'd just be like insane right off the bat.
There's so many guys that are good athletes.
I know.
I find NHL hockey players are good. You go to golf course, everyone can play. You go to a ping pong table, like you said, everyone. There's 5-6 guys in the team that are unbelievable. There's just a lot of good athletes.
But then you go play two-touch and it's only the Europeans. We're schooling everyone.
Or you try to get a European to throw a baseball.
Best passer among anyone you played with or coached in the NHL?
Ooh, man. I have to go back a little ways. Geez. Well, I think we've had a few with the Twins. Obviously, Hank would be right up there. If I had to pick one guy, it'd probably be him.
Best pure goal scorer?
Oh, Solani, McGillney.
Hardest goalie to score on in practice that you've ever seen in the NHL?
Jim Thomas.
Best all-around person you've encountered in the business?
Ooh, that's tough too. There's a lot of good people in our business. We're lucky that way. Paul Korea.
It's a good answer. Under the radar NHL defender whose game you can't help but admire when you're doing a pre-scout?
There's lots.
NHL forward, same question.
Again, there's so many good defenders in the league. There's good defenders on teams that don't win either.
And finally, average salary of your current contract, since it hasn't yet been previously reported.
More than my last one.
All right. So thanks for that. I think you answered like 2 of 10. So I think you're on all fours in the corner of the ice.
This season for you,
I'll take it. Canucks fans haven't seen you in a bit, but during the playoffs, there was that moment. You're on vacation in Vegas, taking in an NHL playoff game. You're shown on camera, and immediately afterwards, Tyler Toffoli scores. As Canucks fans, enjoyed that symmetry, or at least ruefully enjoyed that symmetry on Twitter. Did you hear any reaction from that moment? Were you even aware that you were on TV at the time?
I wasn't aware, no, until I don't know, probably a few minutes later, my phone started blowing up, and then I was aware. So.
Is it just one of those things like a fitting capstone to last season?
I don't take a lot of. I haven't thought about the Toffoli scoring really at all until you just brought it up. I didn't think about it then. Once a player leaves and he's playing on another team, you always want players to do well, but you don't really look at it that way. Obviously, in a game like that, if anything, I was happy for Toph to be having success. Unfortunately, he wasn't with us, but that happens in our business a lot. I think when you're in it a long time, you understand that, and you want good people to succeed. And I'm happy for him. I mean, I don't like it at our expense when we scored, but in a game like that, I would have been happy for him at the time.
I want to take a second and tell you about Indochino. I'm really excited to order some custom shirts. Really looking forward to a process that seems to be smooth and easy to use. Highly recommend checking out their products, as I have, even though I've yet to purchase. I can't wait to. The right outfit can bring out something special in us all. And with Indochino, creating your best look yet could be more affordable than you think. It may have been a while since the last time you had an excuse to dress up. But whatever that next chance is, make the absolute most of it with Indochino. Indochino is now open at select Nordstrom stores, giving you even more ways to get great fitting, personalized clothing. Find your newest location at Indochino.com. Right now, you can get $50 off any purchase of $399 or more using the code AthleticNHL at checkout. That's $50 off a purchase of anything $399 or more at Indochino.com, Indochino.com. Promo code TheAthleticNHL. Our friends at Manscaped have cleared you for takeoff with their 4th generation Lawnmower 4.0. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get your rocket ready for takeoff, oh boy, by going to Manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code VANCAST. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code VANCAST at manscaped.com. With this summer, one thing that it's brought, in addition to revamping your roster and a bunch of other stuff that we'll get to in a bit, you obviously reworked your staff, right? Newell Browns landed in Anaheim in Orange County, close to your summer home, and you've brought in Brad Shaw. What can you tell us about the process for you and the team as you went through those changes, and what's the workflow been like with your new staff so far?
Man, where to start? I can honestly say that was probably the hardest decision I've ever been part of and had to make. I guess at the end of the day, was making that change. Newell's not only, in my mind, a really good coach, but he's even a better person and a very good friend of mine. So that part was extremely hard. And then it will always remain that way in my mind. I just think that at the end of the day, we've had a staff that had been together for a while, and much like our team, I think really needed to have some changes to it after the season we had. When that season, I think it did leave a mark a little bit on our group, and I just think you see it a lot in the game where staffs are together for a while, and sometimes there needs to be, or you want there to be. I don't know if I'm right or not, or if we made the right decision, but sometimes different voices help. And this was just a case where we felt like we wanted to add a few different voices to our group. Obviously, we brought in a veteran coach, Brad Shaw, and he's going to give us a different presence, a different look, and most importantly, just a different voice. I've got a lot of respect for him, much like I do for a lot of coaches in the NHL. But I think also we brought in a younger coach in Kyle Gustafson too, who's going to bring in the enthusiasm, that youthfulness, eyes wide open. Hasn't seen a lot in the league, which I think is also a good thing. I think there's something to be said for freshness and maybe even being a little naive at times, and that's okay. I'm actually, that's part of it that I'm welcoming. He's a sharp guy, he's a sharp coach, and he's got a lot of fresh ideas that I like. And I just think, sometimes change is good.
With Newell departing, right? I mean, that's one of the most experienced power play assistants you'll find in the NHL. And Jason King assumes that portfolio. It'll be his first year behind a bench. Does the shape of your coaching staff leave you in a position where you're more likely to be more involved with your top offensive players this year than you maybe have been in the past? Yeah,
I think so. I'll have probably some more, maybe a little more input. I've always been a coach that's really let their coaches coach. I'm not gonna change that. But Kinger and I have talked, and Kinger and I have a really good working relationship. I've mentioned to some of the guys already that are our top guys that I'll be a little bit more involved in the power play, but still Kinger's going to run it. And I might sit in more meetings, for example, have a little bit more input, but not a whole lot. I just think I'll be a little bit more involved, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Is there a positive or possible positive spillover effect from that, whether it impacts just the power play or maybe filters into other aspects of the game to have more touch points in that kind of manner?
I'm not sure. I think it's easier to try to, everyone, including you've got a job to do in media and try to kind of make a story out of something. But I feel like I have a lot of touch points already with our top guys. And I also think that our top guys and top power plays, as they're trying to word this right, the top power play units for me, the players really understand the power play. And they're almost like coaches in ways. You hear them on the bench come off and they're already talking about an adjustment that they need to make. Then there's the skill level, obviously, of the power play players. And when I say skill player, I mean learning little nuances in the power play that take some time. And I think our young players are still getting to that stage. A guy like Quinn Hughes or Petey, for example, or Besser, and Bo. I think Millsy's a guy that's been in the league a while and has maybe a little bit more knowledge on the power play in ways, just because of being in the league longer. But I also think that our young guys are very smart hockey players, and they're learning every year. They learn a little more when it comes to little nuances that I'm talking about. And I can hear them on the bench talking about it when they come off. And really, as a coach, that's what you want, because the power play, obviously, there's coaching that goes into it, but then the players have to go out and make the plays and read the plays to make it effective. Because you can't just say we're going to do this. The other team has a say in it as well.
I want to pick at JT on the power play in particular, because you mentioned the brain that he has for that part of the game. And when you think about him coming in his first season in Vancouver and starting at the net front as sort of your net front guy, and then moving to his downhill side where he kind of initiates, like most of the other guys are one-time options almost for him, because you have three lefties up high with
Right.
including Horvat in the bumper, right?
Yeah.
But he's been effective in both spots, right?
Sure.
You've defended Miller whenever he's come under criticism. Like, he's clearly a player who you trust, right? What is it about his game that has worked so well for you in his 2 years in Vancouver, in your view?
Well, I think when you say I defend players, or as a coach, when you do defend players, there's no players that, I'm not sitting here saying JT Miller is perfect, is the perfect player on the ice. It's hard to find those kind of guys, but I will defend JT. This guy loves to win, and he is ultra, ultra competitive, and he's good. And it's easy to defend guys that are good, ultra competitive, and love winning. Now, are there things that he's done that I haven't liked? Of course, there are. And last year, probably there was a few more things that I didn't like in his game than I did the year before. But that's not coincidence. We were losing. He was playing a different position. He was playing probably more minutes than he should. And these are things that we've talked about too, as well. And we do talk. JT and I talk a lot behind closed doors. And I think, to a man in our room, we still push our players to become better. And we're going to continue to do that. But, you also have to look at each player individually and how you push them. And I tend to back players that just love to win, are ultra competitive. There's a saying that you'd rather have lions on your team than have to tame lambs. And, you want guys like that. And I think to win in this league is hard. And you've got to have ultra competitive guys that hate losing.
I put too much spin on the ball there with the defend Miller thing, because I really just wanted to hear you talk about his importance to the power play and how quickly he adjusted to being an initiator. I think people would be surprised to realize that he's kind of like the quarterback. Like, most things flow through him 5 on 4.
I think in a way, the way our power play was set up, when you have a lefty coming down on that side, that's the reason that he's going to get the puck. I think there's so many different ways to run a power play. And a lot of it determines on what you have on your team, in the hands of your players, how it sets up, the shooters, who's the shooter, who's smart enough to make a play and see the hole, see what's available, who can make a touch pass, who can let a pass go. And those are all things that, a lot of people probably would never understand if they haven't played, in the NHL on a power play, and B, if they haven't played, a high level of hockey. But and as coaches, we're trying to constantly fit that in. It's a puzzle that you're trying to fit together. And I think we've had a lot of success running different looks. And I think we're going to constantly continue to change our looks. I think you need to, but also figure out what works best for your group. And I think this year we'll be able to have two groups that'll also be effective, which is important. You need to have success from both groups. Obviously, your first group will score more, but you need to get goals from the second group as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and the performance of your power play year over year sort of stands as a testament to that, right?
Yeah. Sure.
With another right-handed scorer, a guy who can be pretty lethal and has spent a lot of time at that left circle in Arizona, and Connor Garland. What sort of options does that give you? Because you've pretty regularly only had sort of two righty forwards on your power play over the past couple of years. Does the additional versatility, like, would there be an advantage in your view to having two righties on PP1, or even the option, the versatility to go to that, should you decide to in season?
It will, for sure. I think Connor Garland's going to give us a lot of benefits, not just on the power play, but in our overall game. When we talk about the power play, I think having another righty is going to help us. I think Connor's a guy that can play different positions as well. He's not just, he can play net front, he can play bumper. He's played all four spots in Arizona. He's also a young guy that, again, when I go back to the youthfulness of our group, he's still a young player in the league that's learning that position as well, but he's got an enormous amount of skill level. He's got good vision on the ice, and he's a competitive guy.
And I just want to go back to JT really quickly, because I wasn't planning on asking this, but I've often wondered about it, and I think it's relevant, especially with the player that, in the mind's eye of Canucks fans, they're hoping to see from Vasily Podkolzin, a rookie player. But typically speaking, heavier wingers coming into your teams over the past couple of years, whether it's Josh Levo from Toronto or Tanner Pearson from Pittsburgh or JT Miller from Tampa, that player type in particular has seemed to have a lot of success working with you and within your system. What is it, do you think, about the way your teams play that permits those players to do so well, or that player type, whether you want to call them like a digger or a heavy press or whatever, to sort of excel?
I think when you talk about heavier bodies or players like that, I think, it's not just our team. And when you're talking about those players, Josh Levo had a good year with us. JT Miller, I don't look at JT Miller like he's just a huge guy or a big power forward. He's just competitive, and he's strong on the puck, and he's got good hockey sense. For me, winning puck battles is, you look at good teams. They're heavy on the puck, and when I say heavy, they just own a lot of pucks, little loose pucks they come up with, and is that strength? Part of it is that size. Sometimes it is that quickness and being brave. Yeah, part of that it's that too. And there's also the side of being a veteran and being in the league and understanding the importance of it. And I think for me, it's just not bigger bodies. It's just guys that can own the puck. Last week, I was going through a lot of our goals against from last season. And, there's so many times when you're watching it, 100 of them. I got through about half of them one night. And, you own a puck here, you're harder on a puck there. It changes a lot of things in the game.
Does that ruin your evening to go through that exercise?
It does. Yeah, I try to follow it up with the goals for after.
You said at the tail end of last season that the experience that you'd gone through, had made you a better coach. With space to reflect on it, and it's been 3 months minus 10 days since, Canucks Steel last hit the ice. Right. What was the biggest lesson you'll take from last year, do you think?
I'm not sure if I could sit here and just pick out one lesson. I think, whenever you go through adversity, it teaches you a lot. I've said it many times. Sometimes losing and going through adversity, it teaches you more than when you win. You hear it a lot, players that win at an early age, and then they don't win for a long time. They maybe didn't appreciate the good times as much as they should have. And, I thought last year there was a lot of adversity, and not just for us, for the whole league in ways. I said it at the beginning of the year to our coaches that just when we were probably 3 weeks in, that I said, the teams that are winning this year and our things are going good and are rolling good are gonna have a huge advantage as the season goes on, just because of how intense and the density of the schedule.
Right.
The losing's gonna going through rough times, you're not gonna be able to catch your breath like you do in a regular season. Trying to keep your team confident, because with confidence comes motivation. That was a big part of last year. And not just for the players, but even your staff. Everyone wants to win so badly. Trying to make sure that you keep a level head and try to find answers that are going to be productive and not answers that are going to be detrimental to your group is one of the things I learned. And I think you're always looking for that as a coach. But in a year like last year, it was probably more prevalent.
Yeah, and that dovetails with some of your comments about how last season left a mark, right? And we've sort of seen that play out a little bit this offseason with Alex Edler's departure, for example, and him saying after the fact that, he wasn't having fun playing. How do you go about resetting, I suppose, especially with a shortened training camp, and we're not really sure what type of restrictions will still apply, and obviously you're integrating a ton of new bodies. How do you sort of turn the page on that, especially considering the weight?
Yeah. I don't think you ever just turn the page. You don't. When you go through hard things, that's why they're hard, because they leave a mark. And I think it'd be foolish just to say, "Hey, let's just turn the page." I don't think it's something that you can dwell on either, though. I've talked to all of our players about next season, the expectations, the attitude, the commitment that we need to have. I'm not going to continue to talk about last season. I think that could be useless energy, and I want to talk about what we're going to do going forward. And still, those lessons hopefully have been learned. And for me, it's after the moves we've made, it's about coming back and a little bit of redemption. We made some noise the year before. We were on the right track. Last year we took a step back, but that happens sometimes. You look at a team like Tampa Bay. This is one of the better teams we've seen in the NHL for a long time. They've also gone through a lot of adversity as well along the way, and that's all part of winning in the NHL.
And you indulged us with the lightning round, so we'll indulge you by moving along and not focusing on last season beyond one more question, which is I just want to ask you in the wake of how things played out this offseason with Nate Schmidt. Did you ever have a chance to talk to him about perhaps why it hadn't worked? Why do you think it didn't work out so well, perhaps on both sides in that sort of 1 year marriage?
I talked to Schmidt, at the end of the year, and I talked to him probably 3 weeks before the trade, a month before the trade, and I texted with him after the trade. I think self-admittedly, he probably didn't play his best last season. We probably didn't see him at his best, but that can be said about a lot of guys. And I wish nothing but the best for Schmidt and his future.
In terms of going forward, but also touching a little bit on where your club has been the past few years, you hear, I'm sure, some of the media scouting reports and the talk about your club's defensive game. How do you take a step as a group in that area, and how big a point of emphasis is it for you this offseason?
Well, it is. It's I think when you talk about good teams, bad teams, teams that don't have good seasons, everyone thinks about the teams that score goals and have all this skill, but the teams that are winning in the top of the league, they're also at the top of the league defensively. And it's no coincidence that the teams that don't have the good records, they're at the bottom of the league defensively. Mm-hmm. So we know full well that we need to be better in that area. And that comes in a number of ways. I think when your team improves, and if your team is a better hockey team, has better hockey players than any team than the year before, they're going to be better in that area just by having better hockey players. But it's also a commitment from your group. There's a lot of teaching, a lot of learning, and I don't mean just the players either. That's the coaches demanding it. It's stuff that we've already talked about with our group, that we need to be a better defensive team. But in saying that, you've heard me say it a lot that, a forecheck affects your breakouts. It's the same way with defensive hockey. Owning the puck and having the puck in the offensive zone is going to help your defensive game. And then there's obviously the actual defense. And if you really broke down defensive hockey, we looked around the league, which we do a lot of, and study different systems. There's only a few different systems that are used. And then it comes down to really how you teach it, how you coach it, the level of your players, if they can do it. And I'm expecting our team to be better defensively next year, but I also expect them to be better offensively as well. And, I think if you talk to any coach, they want a team that is good at both ends of the rink. I also think that we have some younger players that we've tried to never stifle their game offensively, and they're going to learn to be better at the defensive side of the game as well. And that just comes with being mature in your game and understanding it. Puck management is a big part of defensive hockey. Turnovers kill you in this league. That's where a lot of offense is created off turnovers. And I think that's an area that we need to be better at as well. I think if we're harder on the puck and we manage the puck a little better, that's going to help as well. So it's an area in our game that we know as a coaching staff, and it's not just our staff. Every staff in the league focuses on defensive hockey, but the way analytics are, and the fact that we use them as well, we're obviously aware of where we need to improve in our game, and we have to install certain drills in practice and work on a little more. And you touched on training camp. I think this year's training camp will feel like it's a long camp. We're going to have lots of time to work on our game. We want to get down to our team probably a little quicker than we have, and work in a lot of different areas that we didn't get a chance to.
Do you start to take?
I rambled on a little bit there.
No, I like it. I mean, the problem is you left me with some questions that I now want to come back to, but I want to first follow up by asking you if you begin to take it personally that you're being described more widely as like an offensive-minded coach, because that certainly wasn't your MO in Utica, right? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's?
I don't know if I've heard that before, but. And that's fine. I think if you ask the people that know me best, they'd probably say that he's more defensive minded. I think every coach probably tends to be that way. Maybe if people think that way is because I've used the words fast and aggressive before. But that was something that we wanted to install when we first got here, that we wanted to be a faster team, a little bit more aggressive team. I felt like we needed to have that attitude installed into our group. But I think when you look at teams that win, they are fast and they are aggressive, but that doesn't mean that you're not being defensive. I think with some of the aggressiveness that we've had to play in years past, has it affected maybe some of our rush game? Yes. We've always looked at different things and different parts of the game to make adjustments in our game. And even last year, there was a time where we did make a little adjustments as far as our being an aggressive forechecking team and changing that a little bit. But that's just part of coaching. But as far as me being an offensive-minded coach or defensive-minded coach, I think I'm more of a, much like probably every coach in the league, a 200-foot coach, wanting to be good in all areas of the game.
Well, and you mentioned tweaking the system because we saw something happen. I still don't know that I have a really good grasp on what, but we saw something happen in late January, right, last year, and then your club began to control play a bit more in February. But we also saw something happen during the pause last year, right, in terms of your overall defensive game, and then we saw a team that was much more bend, not break defensively when you guys won a couple rounds in the bubble. Was it frustrating after that work, and then to see that work pay off against Minnesota and St. Louis and even Vegas, to then sort of take a step back again defensively last season? Like, as you think about...
Yeah, I think that's just an accumulation of how frustrating the whole season was last year after the playoffs.
Right.
And I'm not going to use excuses. We didn't have a good year. We own that. That's part of it. I think we're going to be much better next season. Not that I think it, but I truly believe it.
Yeah. Well, and how much do you think some of the new personnel you've brought in, whether it's a guy like Dickinson or Garland, and, still young players, but, not 22, they're 25, right? And then you add Poolman into the mix, the fact that you can go and list 6 Canucks defenders before you get to guys like Brad Hunt and Luke Shen, who are, NHL level players without doubt. How much will those changes, those upgrades, help you in your view?
Immensely. That's why you make changes in the offseason. I think Jim's done a good job in adding some elite players to our group. And like I said earlier, it's no coincidence that the best teams that win at the end of the day have the best numbers offensively and the best numbers defensively, or trend that way. So the first step is making your team better on paper, and then the next step is going out and playing. I also think there's part of it is the youthfulness of our team is going to, as it matures, our team is going to get better. I don't think a lot of our young players, not that I don't think, I know, they haven't reached their potential yet. And those are our key guys, our key players that play against the other team's top players, and they're all still getting better, which for me is one of the most exciting teams or items of our franchise.
In the wake of the offseason moves, Jim noted that the coaching staff had spent some time watching video on some of the new additions. And I believe it was an answer specifically about Tucker Poolman. I also saw in an interview you gave to Ian McIntyre last week, you discussed watching some video of OEL. Obviously you were in Vancouver while the meat of the club's offseason moves were going down. In terms of video scouting and input and working at all with management, Canucks management, Jim and everyone else, how involved were you and your staff in identifying some of the players that could help you defensively?
Well, I think overall, when Jim and I communicate about everything we do, I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate working with Jim. Myself, our staff is Shazi and Bomber. They watched a lot of defensemen throughout the summer or throughout the build up toward free agency. And obviously Jim's the GM. He makes the final call, but he does take a lot of input from our group and what we think and what we believe in. And he puts it all together, and he's obviously the one that makes the final call. And
last one from me, because the AHL teams come in Abbotsford. Locally, you've got a ton of experience having coached down in the American League, and your teams, or your organization anyway, has spent a lot, frankly, right? There's been a lot of talent brought in, those sort of tweener types who can probably play 10 good games for you, or maybe 15, 20 good games for you, but also are going to be elite players at the American League level. You mentioned getting down to your numbers relatively quickly at training camp this year. What benefits can having a loaded AHL team have for you at the NHL level, but also how much trickier does it make navigating training camp in general, especially if you're keen on, making relatively rapid cuts here?
Well, I think it's important. There's something to be said about competition. Internal competition. I think every team talks about it, and it's harder to get than it is to talk about. I think if there's one thing you can look at our group right now is it's going to be very competitive in training camp. There's going to be jobs won, there's going to be jobs lost. I think the fact that we have, that we've assembled a team that we have, and the team that Ryan Johnson's put together for us in Abbotsford is going to help our team immensely. Never mind the fact that when we do get down to the final roster and the players that are sent down, we're going to have a lot of good players that we can call up that'll be hungry to stay in the NHL and prove that they belong. And there's probably going to be a couple guys that are disappointed in training camp, as there should be. It's a privilege to play in the NHL. It's an honor. Good teams have strong competition within their group. And I think we've got our team to that place where there's going to be some spots up for grabs. And then there's going to be players when there's injuries that can come up and potentially win a job back as well.
Well, and obviously your organization does make decisions based on camp. We've seen it repeatedly.
Right.
So it'll be fun to watch, man.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you back on the ice, and thanks for doing this.
All right,
even
Thomas.
though, you ralled well from a brutal lightning round performance. So kudos to you.
You rallied a little bit, but I won't give you that much credit.
Fair enough.
Okay, bye. Talk to you later.
Well, thanks, man.
Okay, bye.
Thank you to Travis Green for joining us today on the Vancast. And of course, we've got the Athletic Hockey Show elsewhere at the Athletic Podcast Network with Ian Mendez and Haley Salvian. They're welcoming New Jersey Devils general manager Tom Fitzgerald this week at the Athletic. Check out the comment section for each podcast episode at the Athletic app and rate and subscribe the Vancast on Apple. If you aren't already a subscriber, and you've got to be a subscriber, you've got to join the VIPs. Go to theathletic.com/Vancast and receive a subscription for just $3.99 per month. That does it for this week's episode of the Vancast from The Athletic and theathletic.com.
This episode is brought to you by BetMGM. Sign up today with BetMGM, the exclusive betting partner of The Athletic, and get a $1,000 risk-free first bet. Plus, get a free 3-month subscription to The Athletic. Just sign up at betmgm.com/theathleticpod, that's P-O-D, to take advantage of this special offer from the kings of sportsbooks. That's betmgm.com/theathleticpod, P-O-D. New customer offer, paid in bonus dollars. Visit betmgm.com for terms and conditions. Cue the disclaimer.
Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Nevada, and Virginia. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. And 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. In Tennessee, call or text the red line at 800-889-9789. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Promotional offer not available in Nevada.